Your algorithm will never work in the real world, my brother declared to our entire family at Thanksgiving dinner, just 8 hours before I would sign the acquisition papers, making me the youngest self-made billionaire in healthcare technology. My pioneering predictive diagnosis system had just been purchased by Microsoft for $3.7 billion. But as far as my family knew, I was still a disappointment who had walked away from medical school to play with computers. I'm Amara Chaudhary, 32 years old, with 2 computer science degrees and an MBA that my traditional Indian American family considers vastly inferior to my brother Vikram's medical credentials. For the past 5 years, I've been building Prevenio, a healthcare AI startup that uses subtle physiological indicators to predict serious medical conditions months before conventional diagnostics. The human body is too complex for algorithms to understand, Vikram continued, gesturing with his fork for emphasis. Real medicine requires years of training and clinical experience, not coding shortcuts. Around our parents' dining table sat the familiar audience for this well-worn lecture. Mom and Dad, beaming with pride at their son, the cardiac surgeon. Vikram's wife Priya, a pediatrician. My younger sister Leela, finishing her residency, and my grandmother, who still asked when I would find a nice doctor to marry since I'd abandoned becoming one myself. No one mentioned that Vikram's hospital was facing a malpractice lawsuit for a misdiagnosis that my technology could have prevented. No one knew that major hospitals across 3 continents were already quietly using Prevenio's beta system, with early detection rates that outperform traditional methods by 62%. How is your computer project going? My father asked, clearly trying to include me in the conversation while carefully avoiding any suggestion that it might actually be successful. It's going well, I replied neutrally, taking another bite of my mother's biryani. The confidentiality agreement in my laptop bag prohibited me from discussing the acquisition until the formal announcement tomorrow morning. Just well, Vikram pressed, always ready to underscore my perceived underachievement. Still working out of that incubator space downtown? How many employees do you have now? 5, 6. We've expanded a bit, I said, thinking of our sleek headquarters with its staff of 87 engineers, data scientists, and medical researchers. The building Vikram had never bothered to visit despite my invitations. You know, my mother interjected with familiar concern, Dr. Gupta's son has an opening at his healthcare management firm. Very stable, good benefits. I smiled politely. Thanks, Mom, but I'm committed to Prevenio. Committed to what exactly? Vikram challenged. Your algorithm looks at what? Heart rate, blood pressure, skin temperature. These are rudimentary indicators that tell us almost nothing definitive without proper medical context. You're selling false hope to patients and investors. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Prevenio's system incorporated over 347 physiological and behavioral indicators, most imperceptible to human observation. We trained our eye on anonymized data from millions of patient records, identifying patterns that preceded serious conditions long before they became clinically apparent. Actually, Leela spoke up unexpectedly. I read an interesting paper about predictive healthcare AI in the New England Journal last month. She glanced at me. Is that the kind of thing you're working on, Amara? Before I could answer, Vikram interrupted. Those systems are toys, barely past the research stage. Real medical professionals understand that diagnosis requires presence, intuition, a human touch. My phone vibrated with a text from Zach, my CTO. Final acquisition papers ready for your signature. Legal says everything looks perfect. Would you excuse me? I stood, leaving the familiar weight of disappointment at the table. I need to make a quick call. In my childhood bedroom, now converted to a guest room but still lined with my academic awards, all seemingly diminished by my decision to leave medical school, I sat on the edge of the bed and called Zach. How's the family dinner going? He asked, knowing exactly what these gatherings were like after 5 years as my right-hand person. The usual, I sighed. My existence is a disappointment to medical science, apparently. Well, Microsoft disagrees to the tune of $3.7 billion, Zach laughed. Legal says the announcement is locked for 9 a.m. Eastern. You ready for this? Was I ready? 5 years of work, of doubt, of being dismissed by my family and the medical establishment, culminating in vindication on a scale I'd hardly dared imagine. More than ready, I replied. I'll sign everything first thing tomorrow. When I returned to the dining room, the conversation had moved on to Leela's residency challenges. No one asked about my call. No one ever did. Amara, will you be at the Medical Association dinner next month? My mother asked as we cleared the plates. Vikram is receiving an innovation award for his cardiac procedure techniques. The irony wasn't lost on me. My brother was being celebrated for innovation in a field that would be transformed by the technology he dismissed, my technology. I might be traveling, I answered truthfully. After tomorrow's announcement, I had meetings scheduled across Europe with healthcare systems eager to implement Prevenio's platform. Always too busy with that startup to support family, my mother sighed, not quite under her breath. Later, as I prepared to leave, Vikram cornered me near the door. Listen, I'm saying this as your brother who cares about you, he began, his tone softening into what I recognized as his bedside manner. These tech startups, they're unstable, 90% fail. You're brilliant, Amara, you always have been. It's not too late to come back to medicine, to do something meaningful. I looked at my brother, Harvard Medical School, youngest chief of cardiology in his hospital's history, our parents' unquestioned success story, and felt a moment of genuine pity. I am doing something meaningful, Vic, I said quietly. You might want to watch the business news tomorrow. His brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Just a suggestion, I replied, kissing our mother goodbye and heading to my car. The drive to my downtown apartment gave me time to reflect on the journey that had led to this moment. The idea for Prevenio had come during my second year of medical school, when a classmate collapsed during an exam from a congenital heart condition that had gone undiagnosed despite regular checkups. Reviewing his case history later, I identified subtle indicators that had appeared in his routine vitals for months, patterns too easily dismissed as normal variations, but which collectively formed a recognizable signature of his condition. What if an algorithm could see what human doctors missed? What if we could teach a system to recognize the complex patterns that preceded serious medical events, identifying risk factors before they became emergencies? My medical professors had dismissed the concept. My family had been horrified when I left medical school to pursue it. Only my grandfather, a brilliant engineer who had immigrated to America with nothing, had understood. They laughed at me too, little one, he had told me before he passed away. Every innovation begins as an impossibility. His life insurance policy had provided my seed funding. I arrived home to find a delivery waiting, champagne from Rebecca Chin, the venture capitalist who had led our series of funding round when no one else would touch a medical ad company founded by a failed medical student. The note read simply, "To impossible things." Morning came with a flurry of texts and emails as the acquisition announcement hit the financial news. Mikey Rosoft acquires AI he of carry SDRTU PREVEIO for $3.7 billion splashed across Bloomberg, CNBC, and every major business outlet. My phone began ringing almost immediately. The first call wasn't from my family. It was from Dr. Patel, chief of medicine at my brother's hospital. Amara, I've just seen the news, he said, his voice warm with genuine enthusiasm. We've been following Prevenio's development closely. I wanted to personally congratulate you and to discuss how we might implement your system here. The irony of potentially deploying my technology in the very hospital where my brother practiced wasn't lost on me. I'd be happy to arrange a demonstration, Dr. Patel. Excellent. And perhaps you could present at our next innovation forum. Your brother Vikram speaks highly of your work. I nearly laughed aloud at the obvious lie. I'd be delighted. After finishing the call, I checked my messages. There were congratulations from colleagues, from investors, from former professors who had once questioned my decision. But nothing from my family. I wasn't surprised. They likely hadn't seen the news yet, still going about their morning routines, unaware that their failure daughter was now headline news. At 10:17 a.m., my mother finally called. Amara? Her voice sounded strange, almost hesitant. Your father is reading something on his iPad about Microsoft and a company called Prevenio. It says you sold your company for billions. Is this true? Yes, Mom. The announcement went out this morning. Silence then. Billions? With a bear? $3.7 billion to be exact. Another long pause. But why didn't you tell us? I tried, Mom. For 5 years, I tried to explain what I was building. No one wanted to hear it. In the background, I could hear my father asking questions, my mother's muffled responses. Then my father came on the line. "Bida, this is extraordinary," he said, using his childhood nickname for me. "We had no idea your work was so significant." "I know, Dad." "We're very proud of you," he added, his voice catching slightly. Were they proud, or just shocked? Did it matter? "Thank you," I said. "I have meetings all day, but maybe we can have dinner later this week." After finishing the call, I sat looking at my phone, expecting to hear from Vikram. Nothing came. The day passed in a blur of congratulatory calls, media inquiries, and meetings with the Microsoft integration team. By evening, I was mentally exhausted but too wired to sleep. I drove to Prevenio's headquarters, wanting to be in the space where we had built something that would change healthcare forever. Our lobby displayed a wall of testimonials, stories from early access patients whose conditions had been identified by our system months before traditional diagnostics would have caught them. Terminal illnesses caught early enough to treat, life-threatening events prevented, real people with families who would have more time together because of what we had built. "I thought I might find you here." I turned to find Vikram standing awkwardly by the entrance, still in his hospital scrubs. "How did you get in?" I asked. "Your security guard recognized me from your family photos." He gestured vaguely around the space. "This is impressive, much bigger than I imagined." I said nothing, waiting. Dad showed me the acquisition news. He continued moving further into the lobby. Then Dr. Patel called me into his office to discuss implementing your system at the hospital. He seemed surprised I hadn't told him my sister was the Amara Chaudhary. The irony clearly wasn't lost on him. "I didn't know," he said finally, "about any of this. The scale of what you've built, the impact it's having." "You never asked." I replied simply. "None of you did." He nodded, acknowledging the truth of it. "Can you show me how it works? Your algorithm?" For the next hour, I gave Vikram the demonstration I offered countless times over the years, each invitation declined or ignored. I showed him how our system integrated with hospital data systems, how it flagged subtle patterns, how it had already saved lives. "This would have caught the Henderson case," he said quietly, referring to the malpractice suit his hospital was facing. "We missed the indicators. All of them. That's why I built it," I replied. "Not to replace doctors, but to see what humans can miss. To give patients more time." We stood side by side, looking at the wall of testimonials. "I was wrong," Vikram finally said. "Not just about your company, but about everything. I dismissed what you were doing because it didn't follow the path I understood. I couldn't see that you were creating a new path altogether." It wasn't quite an apology, but from Vikram, it was unprecedented. "There's something else," he continued, pulling a medical journal from his bag. "I want to show you a case I'm working on. A patient with unusual cardiac rhythms that don't match any known pattern. I've been wondering if you might look at it with me." The gesture was small but significant. My brother, the cardiac surgeon, asking for my professional input, perhaps for the first time. "I'd be happy to," I said. 2 days later, my family gathered again, this time at an upscale restaurant downtown. The dynamics had shifted palpably. My parents, still processing the magnitude of the acquisition, vacillated between beaming pride and lingering confusion about exactly what I had built. "So Microsoft will use your algorithm in hospitals?" my mother asked, clearly trying to understand. "Yes, integrated with their healthcare systems," I explained patiently. "It will help doctors identify potential health issues earlier, allowing for preventive interventions instead of just reactive treatments." "Like that case you helped Vikram with," my father said, nodding as if he'd understood all along. Vikram, for his part, seemed subdued, still reconciling his previous dismissal of my work with the reality of what Prevenio had become. "Amara's system flagged indicators I hadn't connected," he admitted. "We're starting treatment protocols months earlier than we would have otherwise." "I always knew you were doing important work, Rita," my mother declared, conveniently rewriting history. "A brilliant doctor and a brilliant businesswoman." "I never finished medical school, Mom," I reminded her gently. "Details," she waved dismissively. "Now about the Medical Association dinner next month. You must come. We'll make it a family celebration." Some things wouldn't change overnight. Perhaps they never would. But as dinner concluded and we stepped outside, Vikram pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about what you said. About no one ever asking about your work, he began awkwardly. And you're right. We were all so caught up in our prescribed vision of success that we couldn't see you were redefining it. I nodded, acknowledging the truth of his words. I'd like to understand better, he continued. Not just the technology, but your journey. How you saw something none of us could see. For a moment, I was transported back to childhood. Vikram teaching me to ride a bike, helping with science projects, the brother who had once been my biggest champion before medical school became the measuring stick for success. I'd like that, I said. 6 months after the acquisition, I stood on stage at a major medical conference, presenting Prevenio's integration results from hospitals worldwide. In the front row sat my entire family, yes, even my grandmother, who now proudly told her friends that her granddaughter was revolutionizing medicine with computers. The data was irrefutable. Early detection rates improved by 71%. Preventable hospitalizations reduced by 43%. Lives extended, suffering prevented, healthcare resources optimized. As questions came from the audience, including from several doctors who had initially dismissed our approach, I caught Vikram's eye. He gave me a small nod, a gesture that contained both professional respect and personal reconciliation. Success, I had learned, wasn't just about financial exits or professional accolades. It wasn't even about proving doubters wrong. It was about staying true to a vision when no one else could see it, about creating something that genuinely improved people's lives. Later that evening, at a dinner celebrating Prevenio's expanding impact, my father raised his glass. To Amara, he said, his voice thick with emotion, who showed us that there are many paths to healing. I smiled, thinking of my grandfather and what he would make of this moment. Around the table sat my family, still imperfect in their understanding, but trying now in ways they hadn't before. Beside them were members of my team, the people who had believed in Prevenio from the beginning. Two families, so different, yet both essential parts of my journey. To impossible things, I replied, raising my glass to meet theirs, and to those who dare to make them possible.